Hello everyone, I'm continuing my look at the recent X-Men wave of Marvel Legends figures, which is a pretty diverse array of characters across eras within the X-Men universe. A pretty fun line all in all, I have to say, and today I'll be turning my attention to Gambit. And this isn't any ordinary version of Gambit, this is the Age of Apocalypse version of the character. And this is fairly significant because those who've been long-time collectors like myself will know that we've had a few waves dedicated to the Age of Apocalypse, those variants, those mirror universe alternative versions of the X-Men. And it's a pretty full, pretty healthy collection that we have, but there are a few key missing characters. Gambit is one of them, so it's great to finally have him in the collection. There's one or two others that are notable that are missing: Havoc, Forge, Mr. Sinister, and a few others as well. That could probably make up another wave, but I wonder if now what we're going to start seeing is those remaining characters sort of peppering future waves like we're seeing with Gambit here. Anyway, with all that being said, let's take a look at this packaging. Now, we know what to expect. This is a pretty sturdy, robust card packaging. I really like it. I think it's really solid and chunky, which is great for storing our figures in. It's a little bit bland when it comes to the black borders there, admittedly, but there's a pretty nice window display showing off the figure with all of his various bits and pieces. And of course, we have a very nice X-Men logo up front and center. But the best part of this packaging for me is the side panel. I love how this is largely text-free. We have a lot of space here that is well utilized with a beautiful image taken directly from the source material, which of course is the comic books. And they've picked a great image here of this version of Gambit. It looks absolutely fantastic, and it only gets better if we stack him up with the other figures in this wave, where you can really see just how colourful and vibrant these figures are, and the range of artwork here really does them credit. I think this is just really interesting to look at. It's really eye-catching and really fun if you're going to store them on your shelf in this way. So I love this. It's probably my favourite part about the packaging. And then if we flip it over and look at the reverse, we can see another image here, again taken from the source material, which is great. And then we have a little bit of bio about this version of the character. We can see the other figures available, and of course the builder figure, which is Holocaust, another character which has very strong links to the Age of Apocalypse. Naturally, being something of a collector and having all the other Age of Apocalypse figures in my collection so far, I was really excited to get my hands on Gambit, but there's a few niggles. However, before we get there, I do want to concentrate on the good, and I think they've done a really good job with the head sculpt. This is a new sculpt for Gambit, which is really cool. Of course, that's entirely appropriate, given that this is an alternate universe take on the character. It's going to look a little bit different. So I'm glad that we've got a brand new sculpt out of this. They've done a really good job with it. I really like how they've molded the hair here. There's obviously a lot of loose strands flopping over his bandana, which is great. I like the expression on his face. That is definitely a Gambit expression. And we can see there's some real nice paint apps have been applied here, particularly when it comes to the whiskers or the hairs on his chin and around his mouth there. Very well applied. This looks really good. I would have liked a little bit more of a paint wash running through the hair, in all honesty, as we've seen on some of the other figures. It's not quite strong here, but nevertheless, I think as a sculpt, this goes really, really well. Now, surprisingly, we're seeing a fair amount of retooling here, particularly on the arms. Whilst the actual torso, I think we've seen before and has been recycled, although I can't remember on what character. I'm not sure if it's a Spider-Man or a Captain America, maybe. But you can clearly see a lot of sculpting has gone into the arms, and this is pretty much specific to this character. I don't believe we've seen this ever before. And so a lot of effort's gone in here, which is great. The downside is that there's no paint apps on it whatsoever, so we're failing to capitalize on the excellent sculpting, and it just looks a little bit bland because of course it's just molded in that base brown plastic or blue plastic, as we're seeing in some parts of the figure, and it just feels a little bit drab and underwhelming. And it's such a shame because there's a lot of detail here that if I had just a wash running over this, it would really draw this detail out and it would look absolutely fantastic. And that basically remains true for the rest of the figure. If we look at the cape, for example, again, I'm pretty sure this is unique. This is the first time we've seen this cape. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure it's a brand new piece. And it's just really drab. It's just a very dark red plastic. If it just had a wash over this, this would just make such a difference. Likewise, if it was just brightened slightly, I think it would be much more impactful. And that's kind of my feelings with this. Even if we look at the boots, again, we're seeing some specific detailing in here, which is unique to this version of the character. We're even seeing on the kneecaps as well, individual pieces that are uniquely sculpted for this version of the character, but it just comes across a little bit drab and boring. And I think that's such a tragic waste of a fantastic opportunity, because to Hasbro's credit, they've put the effort in here. So it's just really frustrating that they haven't capitalized on it to really push this figure over the edge. And it's definitely going to hurt, or at least it does in my opinion, because it just feels a little bit underwhelming, and there's so much more here that isn't being used. So let's look at the articulation. There is a ball joint at the top of the neck there, so the head rotates all the way around. It will wobble left and right a little bit too, and he can look down, certainly. He can look back a little bit, but he is hindered by that cape to some degree. Now, he does have ball joints in the shoulders, and he does mercifully have the butterfly wing joint, which is absolutely fantastic. So a good wide range of motion here is appreciated. Likewise, he's got the bicep swivel, he's got the double pin at the elbow, and of course, he's got the standard wrist articulation there. So that handle rotates all the way around and hinge forwards and backwards. He's got the standard swivel at the waist, so of course, he can rotate from side to side and bend forwards and backwards. Again, a little bit of hindrance there caused by that cape, but you can probably persevere with this to get some decent poses out of it. He's got the ball joints in the hips, which kick out to the side. There's the complementary thigh swivel at the top there. Sadly, no swivel at the boot cut, but the legs will kick forwards. They'll go backwards a little bit. There's a double pin at the knee as well. And then we have the ankle rocker, which will hinge forwards and backwards, and of course, pivot from side to side. In terms of accessories, he comes with an additional pair of closed fists and his bow staff. So not the most exciting accessories, and I'll be honest, not the most practical either when it comes to the hands that he's already given. So we do have one solid gripping hand, which is great, but as you'll notice, one is the standard sort of Gambit throwing card hand. He hasn't got any cards to throw this time around, so I'm not sure why they've given this hand, because it does make holding the bow staff a little bit tricky, and it does look a little bit odd. And so this feels like a bit of an oversight. And overall, this is a bit of a weird one as a release. I'm going to give it 3 stars. And I kind of went backwards and forwards on this because there's actually a lot of good things to say about this figure. There's an awful lot of new here, which is brilliant. And that's the kind of thing we collectors want to see, right? We want to see a lot of innovation, and we want to see variants in our figures, like actual variants, not variants. And it does feel as if Hasbro put a lot of effort into this version of Gambit because of all that extra sculpting and new tooling, which is great to see. And then it's almost like they lost interest. And I don't know whether that's a symptom of the reaction to the Age of Apocalypse waves that we've seen in the past. I'm not sure they've been particularly great sellers. I think a few of them have ended up as peg warmers, to be honest. So maybe they lost enthusiasm for this figure. Maybe this was meant to be part of a third wave at some point. I don't know. Pure speculation on my part. But it does feel like they've put a lot of effort into it, but not really capitalized on this, either with paint washes, accessories, or even really having the right bits and pieces assembled to make the most of this figure. As I pointed out with that hand there, isn't really the best fit for this version of the character. And overall, there's just a sense of it feeling a little bit drab and dull because of the colour of the plastics they've used. He could have been done really of just being a little bit brighter, I think, would have made him a lot more attractive and visually interesting. And as I said, having some paint apps just running, some extra washes running through this figure would make a huge impact to how this figure basically looks. And I'm sure there'll be customizers out there who do a fantastic job with this. But as it is, I've got to take it on face value and say, despite having great articulation and all the new sculpting, it just leaves me feeling a little bit underwhelmed and a bit disappointed in truth. And so that's why I'm giving him 3. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do consider giving the video a like. That kind of thing really does help the channel out, and it allows me to keep making more content. And if you're interested in seeing more content, remember to hit subscribe, as there'll be plenty more videos coming soon.